Hey, how's it going? I am here to review some matchups of Sand Goblins versus Cloaks. I'm excited to talk more about this matchup. I feel like I've already talked about this matchup some on the stream here, and I honestly feel like I could just spend months on this one matchup. I mean, it's true with a lot of matchups, but I'm really happy to just spend more time with this one. It always seems to go, and I'm here with Cell from the Discord. Hello.
Thank you so much for having me. It's I really appreciate the opportunity to be a part of the Summoner Wars community in this new way for me now. I've been a fan of this game for so long. Um, and I've been in the Discord now for a while, but it's a real pleasure to get my voice out there and get the opportunity to do this. So my thanks to you for the invite here and this opportunity.
Yeah, of course. I mean, my favorite thing to do here is just to like get to meet people and hear your voices and hear your story about like what got you into the game
Yeah,
and what you love about it because
yeah.
everyone it seems to be a different thing for everyone or everyone at least likes a slightly different play style and whatnot and has a different story with the game. So if you don't mind, I'd love to just hear about how you got into it and your story with the game.
Yeah, definitely. I think it goes back a solid decade now. I think I got started with the first edition in 2013. Um, I found it randomly. It was not recommended to me by anybody. It wasn't like a concerted search on my part for a card game. I'm a board gamer in general. I enjoy board gaming, tabletop gaming. And so I was just looking for something new, and I came across Summoner Wars, and I was hooked. I was hooked instantly. Um, and I now have a complete first edition collection. I've even got the alternate art summoners, and my alliances box is one of those that's signed by Colby. So, yeah, it's got a place of honor in my collection. Um, I got in a bunch of games, a lot of games with friends. I was the one who wound up introducing it to other people that I know. Um, to this day, I have actually never met someone in person who has even heard of the game. Um, wherever I've gone, yeah, wherever I've gone in person, not online, not the digital community, but in person, I've always been the one to introduce this game to others. And I've been really, really pleased by the fact that so many people that I've shown the game have been so thankful, and they've really been taken by it, and then gotten into it themselves. And with second edition, I was really thankful that I had an actual like home play group, myself and it would be five other people. Yeah, there were six of us. We met very regularly and played a whole bunch of games. That was also great.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, that seems like the best way to play it with just a bunch of people in person and hopefully you've
For
played
me,
roughly the same amount. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people play it online. That's how I mean, so I started it sounds like a decade later, but with second edition, but similarly like just with some friends and then eventually I got too good for the friends and came online and they stopped playing.
see, people really enjoy playing with me because I'm like a lead tier level player, so everyone can beat me. So I'm actually perfect to introduce people to the game because I make it a lot of fun because they get to win.
Yeah, yeah. So you had a group for first edition for a while, and then did that fall
No,
off near the end of that?
a group for
Oh,
second
okay.
edition actually.
And then it's and sorry, so and first edition was just piecemeal here and there, or
Correct. Correct.
gotcha,
Yeah, first
gotcha.
edition was piecemeal here and there. I was able to get in a bunch of piecemeal, but still no like actual dedicated group. But then second edition, I had a dedicated group for just a couple of years. It actually just kind of dissolved quite recently.
Gotcha, gotcha. Yeah, I mean, I it's nice to just hear stories about like different gaming groups that people have, because like in the Discord I feel like we all sort of just have this like hive mind of like we're all one massive friend group. And we all talk, and I don't know, but like there's lots of other ways that people have experienced the game, and it's just good to hear about it. Like
Yeah,
Fuzzy Marmot believes
yeah.
there are just all sorts of couples everywhere that play this as a couples game, and I have never played with anyone outside of that one other person. And so there's just a lot of other ways. There's a lot of ways to approach this game. So I'm glad you had. How many
Interesting.
people were in your group? Sorry, no, go ahead.
So interesting that you mentioned that that is Fuzzy Marmot's take on this, because that is actually accurate to my group. So my group was three couples that
Oh wow.
played myself plus plus it was four other people, two other couples, yeah, and myself. So that's, and it was via my introduction to these people.
Wow.
Yep.
Uh,
So yeah,
yeah.
pretty cool. Pretty cool. And we would play other board games as well, but Summoner Wars was a real staple, definitely. And for me, it still is. For me, um, I would say in terms of a card game, and obviously that definition is very, very broad, all different kinds of card games. But if you were to go in the broadest sense and just say card game, for me, it's the second best one out there. I would only say for a card game that the Lord of the Rings card game would have to take the edge. But in terms of like a 1v1, which the Lord of the Rings is not, that's a co-op. A 1v1, a tactical dueling type game, Summoner Wars, nothing touches it. It's my absolute favorite.
Yeah. Yeah. That's wonderful. That's great to hear. I mean, I feel like part of that, just getting the game to work with the group is so important. I mean, like at its core, it's supposed to be a game that you can just pick up and hand someone a deck and they're playing within 5 minutes. And like we do so much
Yes.
talking on the Discord about like the high level of it and the like the few cards from the master set that are like underpowered and you can't play them, and like just all of this strategy that comes after playing hundreds and hundreds of games. But like to see Summoner Wars working at the entry level too is maybe even way more important.
It is. It is way more important. To me, that's actually huge. The approachability of a faction, to me, it's a very big deal. I think it is very, very important. Um, mind bending factions like we're going to see today, in fact, in the cloak, they have their place, and very high levels of play can really leverage amazing strategies, amazing things that you can do with some of these abilities and the way they synergize. Um, so that's great, but I'm of the mind personally that the bulk of the factions, should we ever reach that 66 magic number or whatever number we do reach, and I hope it goes all the way to 66. My hope is that the bulk of the factions fall a little bit more in the approachable side,
Yeah, yeah,
because they're going to have the broadest audience. The approachable, very approachable levels of play and strategy are going to have the broadest audience. The really mind bending stuff, it's going to be a bit more niche, I think.
yeah. Yeah, I completely agree. I feel like this could be a talk show right now. We could just go on like this we could, for an hour. We should start talking about these specific factions in a second. But yeah, I feel like for me as like just I guess who I am too, like the factions being approachable was huge. Like and the game being approachable was huge. Like I'm not one for like trying for trying new board games. It's hard to get me to do it, and so but like once I'm in, just seeing like, oh, these cards are really easy to understand, and oh, that faction's easy to understand and makes sense. And I feel like now I have gotten into some of like the more complicated factions. Like I'm a fan of the Shadow Elves. I'm a fan of the Fungal Dwarves. But even those, like I think you can still pick up as a beginner and kind of get, maybe it's not true. I think you can have some bad experiences with the Fungal Dwarves as a beginner. But I don't know. For myself, just like I don't know, decks like Grognak and Maldaria, just being there and just like I don't know, the core of the game being this simple sort of movement and economy puzzle that never really goes away. That even at like the high levels of Grognak, like you've just optimized this you've just optimized your movement and your attacks and your economy, all stuff that you're already doing as a beginner. While like the cloaks I still don't get at all. But so I'm glad that like I can sort of you can the same things that draw me into it as a beginner like are still present hundreds of games later.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you mentioned about Maldaria and Grognak. Um, I think particularly for Grognak, the ceiling is incredibly high. Grognak, the Tundra Orcs represent the essence of Summoner Wars. I mean, really, it is about action economy. The best economy that you can squeeze out of three moves, usually two spaces, whatever magic you have strategically stockpiled, three attacks, um, and then a discard. That's the if we can say that is the essence of Summoner Wars. I just think the Tundra Orcs embody that somehow, some way, and the depth that is available in that is tremendous. What you could potentially explore, it's tremendous. But yet the approachability is wonderful. It's not going to be off-putting. Um, I think on the flip side of that, you also mentioned, for example, the fungal dwarves. Um, I would actually say, in my mind, they're a little different from the cloak in terms of that complexity. If I put the cloaks in front of somebody, to me they're just mind-boggling. Trying to get them to work, trying to discover what is my mission, what is it I'm really trying to do with this deck. Navigating those waters is extremely confusing for me with the cloaks, and I've seen it
I
confuse
agree.
others.
Yeah.
The fungal dwarves, however, it actually isn't so much that as it is, and this may sound strange, but I really believe this. I think it is more a function of they are so much more app friendly, so much more digital friendly than they are physical copy friendly. And I would put the high elves in that same category. The high elves and the fungal dwarves really take a blow in physical copy play because figuring out all of what units get boosted, figuring out what units have what laws in effect on them, not messing that up, because if you do, it can create completely altered game states where a unit is alive and it shouldn't be, or a fungal beast has not been summoned and it should have been. It can just blow your game out of the water, and all of that is managed for you in the digital version, making those two factions actually way more approachable in the digital version, just for the
Mm-hmm.
sake that you're not dealing with those things yourself. So I think that's the difference there, is those two factions really suffer a bit in physical play for me.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, I mean, it seems like yeah, you wouldn't be want to hand those to people as their first games. They could suffer.
In the in the physical play environment, absolutely not. In the digital play environment, they're still complex. They're still not as clear of a choice as like
Yeah.
Grognak, but they're way more approachable. They're a more ready second choice. Like, oh, you've got a couple games under your belt. You've got the basics of Summoner Wars down. Here, you're gonna find the Fungal Dwarves maybe to be pretty cool because the way that Plaid Hat Games has captured the theme of decay and growth is brilliant. It is so
Yeah,
wonderfully
yeah.
done. When you see it working, it feels so cool. So it is a deck that I would want to very quickly introduce someone to once they have the basics down. I'm not so inclined to do that in physical play because of all of the boost management. It can be quite overwhelming.
Yeah, yeah. No, I completely agree. It's interesting too, because like that you say that there's an appeal to that. Because I agree. Like that, I think my second ever game that I played of Summoner Wars, my friend took Fallen Kingdom against me, and I was like, whoa! Like all of those cards comboing together to like you destroy your
Yes.
own units, and
Yeah.
now super boosted attacks me for even more damage. Like that is what grabbed
Yeah.
me. Like I love combos in card games, and so like to have, I mean, I don't know, like in the Fungal Dwarves, like they're just a tiny bit out of reach for the new player. Like don't play it on your first game, but I like that point of like, but like really on like your second or third game, you could start like if
Exactly.
you think that'll mesh with your personality, go for it, and that's pretty really
Yeah.
brilliant about the game. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. Shadow Wolves and Cloaks are harder. And well,
Significantly.
yeah, I mean, we can talk about that, but like, and maybe transitioning into talking about the two factions we have right now. Like, what sort of factions do you feel like you enjoy playing, or do you gravitate towards some in particular? Do you play them all? Like, what sort of player do you consider yourself?
I consider myself the player of and this is actually on my profile on the Summoner Wars zone. I've got a profile over there, so I can tell you exactly the kind of player I am. I'm the kind of
Yeah.
player who summons stuff, sends it downrange, hopes for the best, rinse and repeat. That's what I do. So throw stuff on the board, it looks good, throw it toward the enemy, hope for the best results, and do that again the next turn. So therefore, my favorite has been the Breakers. I really enjoy the Breakers, and I'm finding as more factions come out that I really enjoy Resolve as a symbol. Um, as long as that symbol retains its identity, which seems to be messing with the opponent, messing with opponent
Hmm.
formation, debuffing the opponent. I just find it a lot of fun. I find those types of game effects to be a lot of fun when I see myself disrupting my opponent's play and forcing suboptimal plays on their part. That's engaging for me. It's a cool feeling for me. So I've always loved the Breakers, but right up there with them on any given day, the Breakers could take second place to the Sky Spear Avians.
Ooh,
They're
interesting.
right. Well, absolutely love the Sky Spear Avians. I love. I think what I like best is two things. Number one, no matter what cards I have in my hand, I always feel like I can do something. I always feel like I have a relevant play. Same is true for the Tundra Orcs. You always feel like you have a relevant play to whatever the board state may be. If I'm the Cloaks, if I'm the Fungal Dwarves, if I'm the Savannah Elves, honestly, even if I'm the Sand Goblins, I don't feel that way. I feel like there will be turns where I'm left scratching my head over how I have a relevant play. How can I impact this board state in a way that's positive for me? But Skyspear Avians, that is never the case. I'm never left. I can get the worst draw in the world. There's always something relevant. All of their commons are so applicable um, that it makes for hands where you always feel engaged with the state of the game. So I love that about Sky Spear Avians. The other thing I love too is the risk reward. It's really cool to me how Ava is low life, very fragile, but a actually very aggressive summoner who really wants to get in the mix, needs to be involved to provide her take to the skies ability to the commons. I love that balance. I guess I love that glass cannon feeling. Now, usually it blows up in my face and I lose in spectacular fashion very, very quickly, but it doesn't remove the fact that I think it's cool and I find it engaging.
Yeah, yeah. I'm wondering any particular way that you play the breakers, because you say you're known for just throwing units out there and attacking, and that's
That's
it.
correct.
And yet, I mean, but yet you're also saying that like you like to find ways to make things difficult for your opponent, and the breakers are sort of known for their health is pretty low. If they die the turn they're summoned, it can really hurt, and sometimes you want to try to push your own units behind to cover or use deceivers to protect your own units. Like how, what do you have? Yeah, like what's going through your head when you're playing the breakers?
You raise great points there, and other players have even mentioned that as well. That it's like you prefer a simpler play style cell, but yet here you are going for the breakers who don't necessarily embody that. I guess for me, they do. I look at units. The Wind Archer is probably the best example. That is so approachable for me. It makes so much sense to me. I've got more range, I've got more movement, and I've got it on a glass cannon. I've got it on a great attack and virtually no survivability. I can get my head around that, and I can try and leverage that. Now, deceivers, on the other hand, I mean, yes, they're a part of the breakers. They are one of the least impactful units in the game for me. I'm huge on deck building, and I love to deck build those out because at my level of play, I can't leverage them to very great effect. They don't do much for me. I actually had a game a good while ago. Actually, it was a humorous moment that I'll never forget. I had a game against another player and I was playing as the Breakers, and my opponent said to me, "Oh my goodness, these deceivers are putting in so much work for you. They're frustrating me. Look at all this work that these deceivers are doing for you." And my reaction was, "Really? You could have beat me." I I didn't even notice how my own deceivers were working for me, and my opponent was feeling it. That's the level of play that I'm at. You could have beat me that those deceivers were doing anything. um, so in deck building, I frequently will deck build those out, and I'll replace them. I love deck building. I love trying all kinds of different experiments. So as the breakers, what do I enjoy? I do enjoy wind mages very much, their ability to move units around. Um, I certainly see other players leveraging that ability much better than I do, but it's still fun for me. It's still an engaging thing to do. And Takulu herself, what a great ability on Takulu. It is so much fun for me to try and strike a balance between, do I want to turn this unit with mind capture for myself, or do I need the magic right now? And so I destroy it. And I love the threat that she constantly represents. I love the threat that mind capture represents to the opponent. And again, you're forcing your opponent into possibly suboptimal plays and positions because of the concern that, hey, I'm against a summoner who's not just able to kill my unit, this summoner might actually take the unit for herself. So it makes it a fun experience for me.
That's awesome, and I love that so much to just hear you describe wanting to take out deceivers and whatnot, and playing Takulu in a way that I feel like I haven't heard of anyone really playing before. I
That
feel like a
that
lot.
yes, leave that to me.
I know. Well, I mean, I just love that. I love just seeing different people have different approaches to the factions, and I feel like you see that at every level of play. But especially like I feel like I've handed Cthulhu to a lot of new players, and they've just been like, nope, not for me. Like my units died immediately. I hated it. So yeah, I'm glad you're having fun with them.
Very
And
much
we could
so. And
definitely.
and and in case anybody is wondering, most common replacement for me for a deceiver is either going to be a the Sage, the Enigma Sage from Eternal Council, or I absolutely love Airy Divers from Sky Spear Avians.
Oh, interesting, interesting. Yeah, and I mean, and maybe if we have some time after the game, we can talk more about deck building and your experience with that, because that seems interesting. But you were so you were thinking Sand Goblins and Cloaks seems fun to talk about, and that's the game that we're reviewing today. Anything in particular that draws
Yes.
you to commentate this game, that draws you to either faction, or are you drawn to it because they're both weird to you and you want to watch other people play
Yes.
them? Or
Yes, that is exactly right. So I'm drawn to it because neither one of these factions make it into my top 10 like favorite to play as. Sand Goblins would be higher on my list than Cloaks. Cloaks, I do not enjoy the experience of playing as the Cloaks. I think you use the words. They don't make any sense to you. Well, they sure don't make any sense to me. But that's not denying the fact that they're very powerful. I would rate them as an A plus faction. They're practically an S tier because I've seen the havoc that they can wreak, and because I think the balance of their cards. If I look at cards in terms of my personal take on card balance, the Cloaks have tremendously powerful cards, even if they're not within my grasp to really make use of that power. I can still acknowledge the power, and I've seen it in action. Sand Goblins, to me, I was a Sand Goblin fan from first edition, and so unfortunately, for me, these Sand Goblins are different enough from the first edition. They don't quite work for me in terms of really enjoying them, but I think they're very well balanced. I would say the Sand Goblins are exactly the way a faction needs to be balanced. They're not overpowered. I don't think they're underpowered. I also think they're wonderful to introduce new players to the game. Again, kind of like that second or third game experience, because Sand Goblins, I think, are probably the best introduction to the game's economy of hand management and discard management. So once somebody has the absolute rudiments of Summoner Wars under their belt, I would say pilot the Sand Goblins, and they are going to start to teach you about hand management and discard management because of the way things like Burn Hot works and then Mortar. Um, you really now have to start to ask yourself, how valuable is getting this ability, getting this potential extra damage on the board? Is it valuable to the tune of discarding things? And oh, wait a second, I've got these other cards that let me possibly try and get back some of what I've discarded.
mhm. Yeah, there.
Some rewards economy way better than any other faction.
Yeah, 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 yeah. That's sorry. I lost you for a second there, but it looks like we're good. Yeah, maybe. I mean, I can talk about how I'd think to play them. And then we can go ahead and start the game because we should get that started. But like, I I like what you're saying with just helping you think about how you're managing your hand and discards. Because yeah, I feel like I've started to play Sand Goblins in this way where like I'm just very mean, like just like making my 10 health gate be the only thing that's exposed, and then like I'm just like accumulating the perfect hand that I want, like jumping in, attacking you, getting some like getting some quick like discards like the mortar, burn hot, just like do a bunch of damage to you, detonate, come back, I don't know. And but then like also having this planned, like I'm gonna get to the late game and I'm still gonna have a scavenger in hand to reclaim Uncle Sparks. but yeah, I mean that's some of my weird thoughts of them. But the Sand Goblins at their core are they're a faction about structures. You're putting down structures everywhere, and your structures move, and then you give them upgrades. They're the upgrades that can move your structures and get extra damage in different ways. With Mortar, it's really hard for any enemy to ever hide from you, and with Biters that have flight, it's even harder. They're sort of like the ultimate chip damage faction in that way. You could put some wrench rats on your Biters and then detonate them so they all go back to your hand, so you can just do that all again. And then you have some like just very high value champs for the late game
Oh yeah.
as well. But so like yeah, a lot of good cards, but like finding the way to use them is very complicated. uh,
I I see right now in this game we've got one of my, I think, favorite but also strongest champions in the entire game. Silts is right here in the opening hand. For me, this would actually be a little painful. It would be painful for me to see Silts in my opening hand because I cannot bring myself to discard Silts. I just think she is so good, so top tier of a champion. Anything that can start to mess with positioning, um, like she does, she can even mess with summoner positioning. There's no restriction. Uh, I just think she's tremendously powerful, and so it would be painful for me to see her as a player in my opening hand because I would just so much want to keep her, and now I have to start to deal with hand clog and throwing away everything to try and rush toward her, but yet she's more of a later game card. So I would just the struggle would be real if this was my opening hand.
yeah, and it's tough when it's sometimes like that champ, probably just get rid of that because you need to cycle your hand. It's your favorite champ. It's hard to do that. Um, And to talk about the cloaks briefly before we get started, it feels like the cloaks are kind of a you have all the tools, what the heck are you gonna do with them faction? And players that are better will give you a sense of okay, well these are my goals. This is what I'm trying to do. But both of us, it seems like we're like I don't know. I like how like maybe I see the end goal with like Out of Shadows of like you surround a unit and then
Yes.
you kill it and you assassinate it with dagger. Like I see what you end up doing, but like how you get there and how you set up your units and how you set up your machinists with moto boots behind them that are
Yeah.
smoke bombs, like just so it's ultimately inevitable that there's some sort of assassination or that your opponent isn't able to respond to whatever board presence you have. Like you said, lots of really strong abilities, but like, how do you use those well? It's tough.
Um, I'm probably going to be highly controversial here. You know, I'll probably enrage a bunch of members of the community, but my take is I think the cloaks have three quite overrated commons and one underrated common. So the underrated for me is the Rust Side Bandit. In my
Mm,
opinion, the best, hands down, zero cost uh, card, zero cost common unit in the game. The Rust Side Bandit, what a great stat line. You've actually got a worthwhile body for zero, um, three health, and then that one strength that is very deceptive because that just goes up. It's one plus, and that just goes up. And as that goes up, you've already got the life. Rust Side Bandits to me outstanding unit. All three
yeah.
of their other weapons, for me personally, I just feel they're overrated. I think the ability to shoot through, attack through things, we see it on the Guild Sniper, and now we see it with the newly released Mountain Varga on their Shale Slingers. For me, yes, it's nice. I don't think it's as nice as it's typically made out to be. Um, I have had the dream where I have had guild snipers lined up on an enemy summoner, no less, and just been able to shoot through, shoot through, shoot through. And even with the dream, at the end, I'm left feeling like Okay, that wasn't hugely impactful. Machinists, they look great on paper. To me, the machinist, that versatile ability looks great on paper. Actually getting it to work well for you uh, is almost always sacrificing a move so that you get an extra attack, not sacrificing an attack so you get an extra move. And the ability to actually use that, I I just don't see it happening enough to justify the low stats to cost. Um, Gunners, I think Gunners really suffer from the two space. The two space range is a shame. They have great stats, and out of the three, Gunners are the best. Gunners would be my choice out of Gunner, Machinist, and Sniper. Um, Gunners are an okay unit. Again, I think just slightly overrated.
It's interesting. That's interesting. I feel like my instincts are similar to yours. Like when I first started playing these factions, maybe I wasn't a fan of the bandits, but like you see the bandits and you see like a zero magic, like I don't know, usually you can usually get it to be a 2/3, sometimes even better. And then I see the
Mm-hmm.
Machinist, I'm like, it's just like a 2 cost 4 health unit that's gonna die, and I'm never gonna figure out how to use that freaking ability. And the
Yeah.
sniper, like it's only hitting for 2. And then I think the like the high level response to what you said is like, yeah, like this, if you're not using the abilities on these units, they're not so great. But if you can find creative uses for them, as I think a lot of players have, they can start to go off the charts. And uh,
Yeah.
and how to get there? I mean, it's just like steps 2, 3, 4, and then eventually profit.
Yeah.
Like how you actually get there to like using all these, using machinists and using moves in the attack phase, and setting up plays so like you're able to get the assassination next turn. Uh it's tough. You got a lot of tools, but how do you use them? What's your goal?
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
They're undeniably strong, and I'm wondering, I'm suspecting today we're probably going to get to see that on display in what is a Division 1 game. It's so strong that I could even see a nerf to Vlox myself. Vlox has the number one strongest summoner ability in the entire game, in my opinion, and I could see Vlox going to 12 life and being very viable and maybe even more balanced.
yeah, I've heard that before. I mean, I think Platheads loath to nerf things when they don't absolutely need to. So I kind of doubt we'd see it. But
Agreed.
there's a decent chance you're right. um, but with that, you want to get started with this game here?
Absolutely. I'll press play here, and
Awesome.
for the
Okay,
sake of our play and pause.
all right, I'll press play too, and we'll stop at the end of this turn. And yeah, so this game's already been finished. It's from Div 1. We're just watching a replay, trying to keep things synced up. And right away we're seeing the Machinist tucked into the corner. That's maybe one of those uses that you don't feel that you don't typically see. All right, I'll head back. So I've watched that first turn there. You think we're on the same page?
Yeah, I'm just finishing up turn 1 now.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah, and like you said, to do that play with the machinist where you don't even use it in actual combat, but you just tuck it into the corner. It's counterintuitive, but I now get it because you want to load that machinist up with upgrades, the moto boots, the hand cannon, and then have Vlox copy that. So very viable, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and I love that we're sort of on the same page with like with being perplexed with cloaks, because then it's great for us to just like point this out and to other beginners in the audience, to just like, well, like what sort of weird plays are going on. And yeah, like I feel like we're seeing more and more people just like you just tuck a Machinist in the corner, you give it Moto Boots and the hand cannon, and then Vox just has that for the rest of the game. That's something you're good at. Guild Gunners, super high value. Just push something in front of it so it doesn't die. And like you said, I mean, Bandits seem like you can easily just summon all four because they're just good.
Are we going on to the next turn?
Yeah, and I'm thinking about it. It might be easier if you are just looking at the live stream feed, even though it's a few seconds of delay. It might be easier here
Sure.
than see if you can pull that up, and if it's has issues, you'll just have to press the mute button so the audio doesn't come through. Um,
Give me just a second. I'm loading it up here.
yeah, yeah, no, take your time. We have in chat. In my opinion, the cloaks are really hard for beginners. My sister likes them, but she never wins. Yeah, and I mean, and that's the most important thing. Like it'll surprise me when a beginner is like, oh yeah, I really enjoy the cloaks, but like more power to them. Yeah, I think what one of my friends that like the friend that I probably played the most in-person Summoner Wars with, who was fairly new when I introduced the game, but like quickly just like they're very good. They beat me very consistently, and they love the cloaks. They just loved all the possibilities and seeing that, and so I'm glad that I mean like it seems like Sal and I are on the same page. Like we've had a similar experience with the cloaks, but like I'm very happy that just like in the community at large, lots of people have very different experiences, and lots of people, the cloaks are super intuitive, and something that I think is intuitive, like the fungal dwarves, they're like, this faction makes no sense, I never want to touch it. And so it really is a like just a personality thing, different strokes and whatnot.
So
Yeah.
technology is very much going to foil us today because now it's saying that my app is out of date and I need to download an update.
Okay. Well, you still have the Summoner Wars game up.
I do.
Yeah, I'll just keep I'll say whenever I'm starting to play a turn, and if you're like, wait, I think you got ahead of me, just say something. But otherwise, I'll assume you're on the same page as me. So I'm gonna play turn two and stop it at the end of that. Um, and like, what sort of dynamics this matchup has always eludes me. A lot of people play the Sand Goblins aggressively in this matchup. I always try to kind of play them, or I don't know, I play them aggressively, but with the thought, so I guess I do it too, but with the thought that like I sort of have a ranged advantage and the cloaks have to come to me, so I don't mind backing off at a certain point. But yeah, we have Krusk moving up, getting some attacks, all of the upgrades going on the gate. It's definitely not something I realized as a beginner until like I don't know, like 10 games into the Sand Goblins. It was in person, but I was just like, oh wait, I could put this thruster on my gate.
Absolutely. I've always said if any faction is going to win a game off of the gates alone, it'll be the Sand Goblins. They'll find a way.
Yeah, yeah. And
Yeah, very
anything.
standard turn two there for me. You know, nothing especially surprising.
Yeah, yeah. Just I mean, right now everything sort of makes sense. We're throwing our units at each other. That's what we'd expect from
Yeah.
Summoner Wars. So I'll
I
go ahead and
may
play.
have been inclined to try and take out my own rider if I was the Sand Goblins. I may have been
Mm-hmm.
inclined that deny the magic.
Yeah, yeah, and I think we saw Bernhot that turn. I feel like a lot of times I see Sand Goblins players who are really good just like never using Bernhot, and like being very conservative because you really don't want to burn a detonate or things like that. And like when I first started playing Sand Goblins, I thought riders were super good, and now I kind of think they're kind of the weak link of the deck, even, or like not that they're a bad unit, but they just like they the other units are just more the star of the show for what the Sand Goblins in particular are trying to do. But that's just me.
Agreed. No, I would agree. I think the real danger is Riders, riders are your bulk. They're definitely your bodies, but their ability is, it can be so punishing. It really
Yeah.
can. You see silts get thrown away, by Bernhot, and it can just be devastating. Scavengers, however, that's one of the best common units in the game right there. For me, scavengers are just outside of my top 10 best commons, and they are critical for Sand Goblin's success, I think. Um, Undoing those economic hits that they take by activating their ability. Sand scavengers are just so powerful, I believe.
Yeah. Yeah. I I couldn't agree more. You wanna press play on turn 3?
I just got the video up now,
Ooh.
actually, Twitch. So you just go ahead.
Okay, sounds good. You should be seeing it now. Is that right?
That's right.
Okay, sounds good. So this is that turn. So I'll be a few seconds before you. I can call out the rolls and spoil
Very
everything
much
for
as
you.
expected. We see the moto boots go down just like you would think on the machinist.
Yeah, and then we got this play is just mean. I mean, we just have this stack of units down one row. I mean, this is a play that I feel like you see a lot in, I don't know, just
I
in high level games where
Yeah,
you're trying to just make it so your units can't be killed. You just stack them all, and then
yeah,
looks like here they're expecting this unit to die, so you put a smoke bomb on the unit behind it. So this unit
yep.
can't be attacked. I'd still be afraid it would die to something like a wrench rat and a bug biter. So I don't think I would do this play. I think I'd be too afraid. Um, but
Russ
yeah, this
Russ's life is so precious. It's a real shame. Two hits, that's 20% of his life gone, and we're on what, turn three. That's painful.
yeah yeah. Um, Yeah, see, I don't know. I like the cloaks just they like to just sit in a nice position and then maybe they'll kill you if they can. Um,
Mm.
I think they want to try to get the drop on you at some point. In chat saying you ordered the goats yesterday. I'm glad to hear that. I hope you enjoy them. Goats seem like a lot of fun. I'll hit play on this next turn though. Thruster is going on the 10 health gate.
Definitely best spot for it. Either that or the summoner, and in this case, I would do the same on the gate.
Yeah, and Rider or Scavenger reclaiming a unit as promised. It's just it sort of pays for itself. You get a good attack in, and then you get a card back. It's nice.
Absolutely, scavengers. That they are the staple of this deck.
And so maybe I mean this sort of plays to what we're talking about of the do I throw my units at my opponent or not element of this game where like it feels like when you first start playing you just like, oh yeah, here's a bunch of units, here they go. This turn Krusk is through Krusk had more units in hand but just decided to hold them back and only exposed one unit total that they just know is going to die. But after that it's like, well, you're welcome to attack my 10 health gate, but it's a 10 health gate. That's kind of a waste of your resources. So there's a lot of thought being put into how do I stop my opponent from being able to efficiently kill my units. I'm not just going to throw them out every turn. I will some turns, but I'm going to take an off turn now.
I do see that Silts is being retained exactly as I would have done, and that's kind of painful. It's a bit of hand clog, but yeah, I mean, such is what that's the decision you have to make when you get a great champion so early in the game.
It's interesting that you say that. I would have auto discarded it easily. I'd be like Silts. I love Silts. I love Silts when I draw her 15 cards in, not when I draw her
Yeah,
first turn. But
yeah.
I love being wrong. uh, and we'll just keep watching here. A lot of sort of meta commentary. A lot of people are not a fan of how you can just sort of cash a Machinist in the back, and I can understand
Yeah.
that.
Such a standard play. And here, of course, we get a gate. Normally, I would not put a gate so far back. I like to play my gates pretty forward. But in this case, if I had the machinist back there like that, then yes, I would absolutely put a gate just to protect that machinist. That machinist is an investment that's going to power up my summoner. So I think that is the best possible spot for that 5 life gate.
Yeah, don't let it die. It's interesting here because like it makes me wonder about the range dynamics of this matchup. Because a lot of times when I feel like I'm the cloaks, I feel like I kind of need to get a drop on you eventually. So I would be more tempted to put a gate a space forward just because it's a bit more forward. It's gonna let me move up if I feel like I inevitably need to. But maybe Vexer is just sitting back and being like, no, I'm just gonna sit back the whole game, which is not what I would think to do. And I'll go ahead and play this next turn here.
I would have been
Scavenger.
nervous about that risk with Krusk hitting 2 out of 3, but pulled it off. Scavengers, meanwhile, what a great counter to the Gunners. The Scavengers are just getting great value there because 3 melee against 2 life, a pretty safe bet, a very safe bet, and they're just getting great value, I think. I think Sand Goblins are very fortunate that Krusk managed to get his necessary 2 out of 3.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Yeah, and with Krusk sitting at 7 magic too, like I feel like it could easily just be a game of Uncle Sparks. I'm gonna shoot you and then crouch behind my gate, and just both factions are just refusing to engage.
Yeah, I mean, right now the Sand Goblins are lined up for a great Rider and then Burn Hot back to blocks. Um, but even then, you've burned 1 card, which is huge, to do at best 3 damage on a 13 life opponent summoner. It's just
Yeah.
kind of leaves you feeling a little depressed.
Yeah, yeah, it's not like I don't think I'd go for that. I mean, damage is nice, but it's just so exposed. You lose. I feel like ultimately I lose more value in that play than they do. Yeah, I'm curious to see what Krusk's plan is here. If you've any idea about that, like what are we waiting for? We seem to not want to play any units.
Maximum
What's our
mayhem.
goal?
That's the
Yeah.
goal. Maximum mayhem. Yeah. Confuse your opponents, and while they're totally bewildered, pull off something amazing.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because I feel like I would say a similar thing about the cloaks, um, which is, I mean, it's nice to see them together like this, I guess.
Yeah, we just have little chips being taken. We did have had a burn hot there. That was interesting.
Yeah,
Really point, we don't have a full scale engagement. We just have chip damage from both sides.
yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, it seemed like Krusk. I feel like I would say Krusk did that, wanting the cloaks to come forward. Like they know that like if you put a 5 health unit out by its own, it's like, well, that guy's probably toast. And it kind of feels bad because you have nothing to back it up. So that feels like whether that unit was a 5 health unit or a 2 health unit, it's gonna die. But by putting it there, Vox does have to commit a fair bit to actually kill it. And he did in fact move up, and maybe that's what the Sand Goblins wanted. Who knows?
Yep. unusual gate placement from the cloaks. I don't understand. I
I
don't
don't
see
understand
myself
either.
in that. You know,
That's good that we're in this together.
Sin Sin is an auto discard for me. I lose far more value on her than I would ever gain.
Interesting. Yeah, I feel like when I'm seeing players use Sinsen, like I guess we are right now. Oof, look at the blocks did not do well with that roll. When I see players use Sinsen, I feel like it's often to get some attacks in, soak up some damage, and then retreat and never pop her head out again. So somehow get her in so that she doesn't die, so that she does a little bit, but you do not give the opponent the bounty at all costs.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it seems like so Voltoire made a play trying to assassinate Vox or like get Vox in a corner, and now Vox just escaped by using Sly, and now Silts is dead, which doesn't feel so good.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, especially I think it's good, and it's nice to hear just like plays when either of us are like, oh, that's weird, why did they do that? That's great talking points. Feel free to call those out, as he did like with the gate. Like, what's that gate doing? I don't know, I can only speculate.
And yeah, yeah. Those plays definitely confuse me.
Yeah, I mean, a little bit of pressure, and it's nice. I don't know, and getting some Machinist lines. It feels like Krusk is going to start some sort of advance here soon.
This is a tough cloak's position to advance against.
Yeah, it's somehow the Cloaks have just
Dagger
built
is
up a
a
better
champion.
board. Yeah, for sure. It really feels like the star of the show. Like, I feel like the dagger is the definition of the champion that you simply cannot discard, no matter what. No matter what situation.
He's definitely up there. He is just so good. For cost, you know, even really well costed, just fits into the economy so well, and you get a great champion for that. Um, Again, my problem, just I have all these problems when I play the cloaks. My problem with Dagger is, um, Dagger for me is an automatic include in Cave Goblins. If I ever play Cave Goblins, get rid of the Eater and put in Dagger, and it's just night and day, so much better. In the
Mm-hmm.
cloaks deck, I struggle more with Dagger because invariably I draw her and I haven't drawn my bandits, or my bandits are all dead, and that's what she combos with. She combos with the bandits. So Dagger is a little bit more of a challenge for me actually in the cloaks deck.
Yeah. Yeah, I can understand that. And maybe and we have a comment in chat that Sinsen works well enough with Dagger to be a worthwhile play. So maybe maybe that's part of it too. And that's what we're seeing right now is using Dagger with Sinsen. And I really like Sinsen's position right now. Like, only exposed on one side, she's not going to die. She can retreat next turn because of Dagger. So that's another good zero cost to take advantage of. And I'll hit play here. But yeah, I feel like I'm often like, as the cloaks, it's like, all right, I want Dagger in my hand, I want Out of Shadows, I want Moto Booth, and maybe a Bandit, and that's the ideal hand. That's like the best possible hand I can have, where I'll just be doing all sorts of nonsense. And I'll still get that hand sometimes and be like, I don't know, now I have it. What do I do with it? But And wow, look at what I just said. I said, no way Simpson's going down that turn. Uh, she sure did. That's remarkable. The efficiency of that Sand Goblin's turn.
Yep.
They're gonna keep playing.
Krusk
Yeah,
is
I did.
here.
No, sorry. Go ahead.
I was saying Krusk is quite vulnerable here. Now to see, for the sake of efficiency, what are they going to now pay?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I guess the gate behind is nice. I don't know how Kresk is getting out of this now that you mentioned that. But it's
It
nice
was a
that at the
great
very
turn.
least,
Yeah, that was a great Sand Goblin's turn. But what's it going to cost them?
yeah. I mean, at the very least, you're probably not dead because the space behind you is occupied, so Dagger isn't going to be rolling 5 dice plus another 5 with Velox. And so it looks like costing them 3 health. I mean, we'll take that. It's a lot better than costing the entire game, I suppose. How does Crust get out of this, though?
Uh, he's got now a thruster upgrade, but and he can move his own gate there potentially because it has the other thruster upgrade. So that's possible.
Yeah. And look at this. Vox is coming in. Is Vox going for a kill here? It looks like nope, we're focusing on Sparks. So we could have gotten 6 dice on Vox, but it's not what we're going for. Or we could have got 6 dice on Krusk, I mean. Instead,
this is still devastating now to Krusk.
wow. Okay, so we're looking at this next turn. You think there's any way for the Sand Goblins?
If I was the Sand Goblins, I mean, I see doom right here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Any way, I mean, you thruster your gate down to B3. And I mean, this is trying to get a retreat going, but oh my goodness, that's just going to be so difficult. And then, yeah, I see the chat there going for Sin hurt them bad. It did. It was a tremendous play. They took out all those units, but it left Krusk too exposed, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what do you possibly do? You thruster your gate down to B3. You move Krusk. Oh my. Yeah, you move your scavenger down to A2.
Yeah. Yeah, there's just nothing. I mean, with
Yep. Scavenger to A2. Yep, there. And now Krusk can force himself through the scavenger, right? Is that how the thruster or the no, it doesn't allow that.
No, I don't think so. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, I think our best bet would be to like build some Rust Riders around Krusk somewhere to keep him safe. I don't know. The more I'm thinking about it, the more I think it's just over. Yeah. Ready to see it?
Ready to see it.
All right, we'll see if they thought of anything. Or maybe there was a kill on Vlok somehow. What is going on here? That's a fair bit of dice. I mean, so we've rolled 6 dice already, plus 2 more from the turret. And now we get a mortar in. We get 2 more dice. This is close. I wasn't thinking about that. I wasn't doing the dice math because I thought it was over. That's game. With the detonate, there were a few rats under that. And that's it. So here we are. Here we are both like, yeah, this is over. This is game. And Krusk
What
finagles
what
it.
was it? What was it that I literally said earlier in this stream? It was prophetic. I said if any faction is going to win off of their gates, it's the Sand Goblins, and they literally just did. Yeah, what a great play. What a great play. Let's look at that again. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, yeah.
This is
I
an
mean,
example of something I would never see. I don't feel like I could ever train to this level of.
yeah, I mean, you can sort of see it as a puzzle. Like, just look at this turn, look at the cards in your hand, what the most amount of damage you can do on blocks, and that is
Get
sort of just a
2 out of
mode
3
of
right
thinking.
there. We get 1 out of 3 there. Then we get 1 out. Oh no, we get 2 there. We get. I'm starting to lose track of where all this damage is coming from.
We can watch it one more time too, and I can I can try to keep track.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, here maybe I'll write it out there because yeah, that was just perfectly it. I mean, it's a really brilliant play from both sides because like I think part of the skill with blocks in this matchup and what I've seen before is just knowing the time when you are making a push, you are exposing blocks and you are calling your opponent's bluff because very often the Sand Goblins just does not have the burst damage. But that was just not the case. Okay, so this scavenger, 1 dice off and it goes bad, says Sagrada. Jackson says, wow. So this scavenger gets 3 melee. From we have a mortar for like 1 direct damage. We and then we have a total of 5 range dice from both Krusk and the Wrench Rat. And then we'll have 2 dice that hit on specials. From Krusk's what's it called? the turret. There we go. And then we'd have another 2 from the gate as well. So at the end of yeah.
I'm sorry.
So at the end of all that, and then after the direct damage from the mortar, we're gonna have another 2 direct damage. So it's a total of 3 direct damage. That says 12, but a total of 3 direct damage. So we're at so basically a 7 health blocks is up against 3 melee dice, 5 range dice, and 4 dice that hit on specials. That could go either way. It really could.
And we actually had room to spare with these attacks because we see the Scavenger and Krusk both not do their full damage. So right now, the way the board is set, as we're looking at it here, plus the Wrench Rat that's going to be summoned, there's actually room to spare. There's actually breathing room. All of the dice do not need to hit because we're about to see several instances where numerous dice do not hit. And there's still enough to take out blocks.
Yeah. We just need to see 7. I mean, I'd imagine the odds are slightly above average here, but you could easily miss, though. I mean, in a situation like this, so you definitely go
there's
for
a
it.
Miss of 1 right there. Here comes another miss. There's a miss of 2.
Yep. But then I think the turret seals the deal there. So we missed it. We missed a total of 4
There's
of our dice.
A miss of 1. There's a miss of 1. I believe we missed on 5 dice.
Yeah, so I think it was we got like 2 of the melee dice, and then out of the range dice in total, did we only get 2 of them or 3 of them?
On Krusk, we got 1, and on the on the Wrench Rat we got 1.
Gotcha. So out of 5, we missed 3 total. Yeah. So out of 5 range dice, we got 2. Out of 3 melee dice, we got 2. Out of 4 specials, we got 3. To just barely add up to that magic 7 that we needed that turn.
Amazing.
Yeah, I mean that room to breathe is exactly it. What you're saying, just like when you see you can miss a few dice and you might still get the kill, that's when you're comfortable with it.
Amazing. 15, I mean, essentially, that was 15 damage on Vlox. Um, Potential there at the end. There's no way that I would have seen that.
That's wonderful. Well, I'm glad we did this game. I just sort of picked this randomly. I mean, I saw that it went on for at least a few turns, so we'd have something to talk about, and that's about it. So,
Perfect game.
I
What a great choice.
yeah, you know, we just got lucky. I mean, two great players, so we'll always give us something to gawk at. Um, but yeah, it's a lot of fun talking about that game. I wonder maybe if we have a bit of time. I'm curious to ask you about deck building and your experience with that. But we don't need to jump off the game right away. We've yeah. Any closing thoughts about this matchup, about these factions?
Just wow. I'm not surprised that that's the word that I'm closing with here. Um, it really was a great game that you happened to pick, and you didn't do that purposefully. You hadn't previewed the game. But what a great game, because that to me was totally GG for Krusk. I mean, it was it. There was no way to victory, but of course it's Division 1 top tier players. And so look at that. Even when I'm surprised, I'm not surprised that I'm surprised at the level of play there to pull off a win for Krusk. Um, Great fun, great to see, and both factions got to showcase a bit of what they do. In this case, the Sand Goblins got to showcase way more. They got to showcase at the very end here all of their chip damage and how it can just pile on.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Absolutely. Well, and I'm glad that we
Honestly, a
can.
little a
No, go
little
ahead.
off theme. I was going to say. That's one thing about the Sand Goblins is I don't actually feel that they're necessarily a great capture of logic and air. Silts is the perfect capture for air, absolutely. The two commons that they have that are air, very, very strange to me, because those two commons are mobile structures. So it's strange. It's like, okay, so now air is adding the identity of mobile structure. That's part of the identity of air. It would make more sense to me if that was part of the identity of logic, because we've already established in logic, in waves 1 and are Sand Goblins wave 2? They might be wave 2.
Yeah,
Um,
they're actually three. They're
Established.
they're the start of three.
No, the start of 3. Okay, so we had established kind of the identity of logic being about structures and kind of utility units in, for example, the Admiral. Um, but yeah, so to me, it just feels a bit off theme, um, that we have mobile structures to express air. It's like, okay, I can kind of see the mobility. But where I was going with that is, I mean, look at how Sand Goblins just ended that game. They ended that game with 15 potential points of damage, and in fact, only 8 were showing on board as attacks. 3 from Krusk, 3 from a scavenger, 2 from a wrench rat. So they had an additional 7 points of damage, which was all chip damage from mortars and rigged explosives and turrets. And to me, that feels very off theme. That feels like fire to me all the way. The fire symbol, that's your non-attack damage. That's where you're getting in this chip damage. And yet, Sand Goblins, which do not have fire as a symbol, they just specialize in tons of chip damage.
Yeah, yeah. That's definitely interesting. I've never thought about that before. That like the chip damage theme is off. I'd have to think if I could justify it. I
Fire.
mean, it seems like factions in general, they don't mind like having sort of a sub theme. Like there's nothing that necessarily says that like Valeria has to be um about like auras, or that like Sundraved um has to like have this sort of like military sub theme. And so like maybe like someone countered that, saying that this sort of chip damage, like just I'm thinking on the fly. I mean, maybe sort of a bug biter. Their way of getting chip damage, you can consider kind of air, as like you're using flight to get like move extra places in order to do damage, and that ability would be air. And yeah, to the mobile structure comment, like I guess maybe I could think of it as like, well, sometimes like the actual symbol on the card, it doesn't like quite capture which elements are in it. So maybe I could say like the mobile structure seems like a logic, but then flight seems like air. That seems just like air. That's just extra movement. And I could say a similar thing for rider. I mean, mobile structure feels like logic, but then burn hot, extra movement, that feels like air. So I guess that's where I get that theme from. But I definitely see what you're saying.
Yeah, yeah, that was always a problem for me with the Sand Goblins is theme is huge for me. I love it. I love it when cards feel thematic. And they never quite captured that for me.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I can definitely see that. And I think just all the decks, they appeal to different people, and that's totally fine. You don't have to like them all. I'm definitely a fan of like when I feel like the internal logic is consistent. Like Sand Goblins have a lot of abilities that just like damage cards in general. And so I like that that's consistent. Like I like that it's like this is the faction that can like find ways to get damage in everywhere and on everything. Like it's not limited to only units or structures, it's just to cards. Well, like a lot of some factions, like when we go to the Eternal Council, it's like all of their abilities only proc after attacking an enemy unit. And so I like how that's consistent and within its zone of like enemy unit, instead as opposed to just cards. I don't know. So I can
Yeah,
appreciate them as their own thing.
yeah. Well, um, great, just a great fun game to watch. That was it.
Yeah,
I don't
absolutely.
think so much fun to actually be in because it was so far over my head. If I was attempting to put up a viable fight at that level of play, that would have been a slaughter. But to watch it and to watch these two very skilled players go back and forth this way, really great to see.
Yeah, yeah, it's a fun. I mean, Summoner Wars is such a watchable game, and it's such a streamable game too. Like
Agreed,
it's
agreed.
in every way possible. Yeah, I'm so glad we got to do this. We've hit our time. We've hit an hour and a half. But you want to chat about deck building a little bit more, or you think yeah, it's
Absolutely.
time to
I'm
hop
I'm
off?
definitely game to I'm definitely game to chat about deck building. Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so this game was great. I'm so glad we got this game. I'm so glad we got to showcase these factions. Well, I'm just curious about your. I mean, you said that frequently you'll deck build in. I mean, I guess the comment you made was about Takulu, that you like to deck build out deceivers for sages. And so I'm curious, just hearing that, like I'm curious to hear your experience with deck building. Like when you're playing with your group in person, is it like common to throw out a little bit of this, take in a little bit of that, or will you sit there crafting your
Extremely.
deck? Yeah, so tell me more
No,
about that.
it's yeah. So the in-person play experience that I've had, deck building is a huge part of it. I was by no means the only one. The group that I played with, everybody very much enjoys deck building. It is very much a part of Summoner Wars for me and for others. And I know for a lot of players it is not. A lot of players it's just play the faction straight, so to speak, exactly with the cards that it's released with. And that is also a component that makes Summoner Wars as a game so cool. And major kudos to Plaid Hat Games for releasing faction after faction that is all viable onto itself and can be played onto itself. And we only have just outlier scenarios, I think, where deck building out a certain card is like a no-brainer. Those are not common scenarios. They're quite rare. And major kudos to Plaid Hat Games for that design, that there's not really many scenarios where it's like, oh, well, definitely get rid of this card because this other card is superior. Instead, you can just play the factions with exactly the cards that they have, and at least 90% of the time, probably a bit more, it's very, very viable. You're not being hamstrung to avoid deck building. But then,
Yeah.
for those in the community who do enjoy it, such as myself, it's just a lot of fun. It is a lot of fun for me. I in fact prefer deck building matches over non-deck building. That's my preference. I prefer to play in a deck building environment where myself and my opponent are both open to doing deck building. Um, and the way I've always played is when you do deck building, you let the other player know what deck building you've done. It's not kept a secret.
Yeah. Yeah, and so like how long into your group's lifespan do you think it was before you started doing deck building? Like, I think a lot of people, a lot of players, Summoner Wars, I mean, the base decks are just so good that they just feel like, well, I don't need to touch deck building. Maybe it's good, maybe it's not. But like I can just spend a billion years doing base decks, and I can understand that. And that was once upon a time that was my position as well. But I've since been swayed. But I'm wondering, especially for beginners, it can be like kind of tough to start trying to change up the deck and have to look at more cards. But like, how do you feel like you guys got into deck building relatively quickly, like only after a few games, or did it take a long time before people were interested?
Instantly. We got into it instantly.
Oh, that's
We got
awesome.
into it, yeah, with such a speed that we part of the excitement, and this remains true for me. A big part of the excitement of looking forward to new factions is not the faction onto itself, it's what the faction is going to bring to the deck building environment. That is at least 50% of the excitement of looking forward to new decks. I have the decks that I love. Let's take Breakers, for example. And now I am excited by every Air and Resolve faction that gets released because it's not about the faction. It's about what cool things am I going to get to build into the Breakers, who I already love as a base deck. Very strangely, for me, I love the Skyspear Avians, and they actually break that rule. Of all of the factions, they break the rule of deck building where they're because of Ava's ability, you really and Cyruk, there's two cards right there that make deck building much less viable. Um,
Yeah.
so Skyspear Avians are more the exception to the rule in that regard. But for me and my group, deck building was immediately something that started to be experimented with. I mean, it was like, a scientist's lab just trying to see, like, okay, how does this work? How can this work? What crazy things can get involved, with this? And that's another great compliment to Plaid Hat Games is any game like this, any combative card game where there is deck building, take your pick, Magic the Gathering and Hearthstone and this game, it's kind of a given that the deck building environment is going to just get crazy because the company cannot possibly continue to make cards viable and also make cards that are not bonkers with some kind of a combo in deck building. And yet here we are, and I feel like Plaid Hat has avoided that. They have dodged that so far. Now, we're not even halfway into the full potential of Summoner Wars Second Edition. But I do say we're at a point where there's now a lot of deck building that's possible, and we've yet to see a broken combo that needs errata to say, okay, you just can't do this. That hasn't happened yet.
Yeah.
On that note, I want to call out the Mind Witch, one of my favorite commons. I believe one of the most powerful commons, probably definitely in the top 5 most powerful commons in the game. And I would be inclined to say probably in the top 3 most powerful commons in the game. I'm just thinking off the top of my head here.
Yeah.
Um, and what a what a bold move, for lack of a better term, to release them in the first wave. The first wave. And the reason I say that is look at their ability. Now, as soon as a card like that is released, it's the same as Vlox, as a summoner with Master of the Art. As soon as you release a card like that, you are putting yourself, you're putting the shackles on yourself. You're confining all future design to need to be wary of this card so that you don't generate something completely broken and impossible to play against. So what a bold move to release Mind Witch in wave 1. You know, I could understand Mind Witch in one of the very final waves of the game. You've already designed all of the air.
Whoops, look like cut out for a second. Hopefully I get you back. And just pausing for a second. Look like brief internet thing. I couldn't agree more with everything Sal's saying though. And it really is impressive just like how well deck building fits together. Like sometimes I wonder how much they're thinking about it, or if they just like have lucked into deck building not being broken. And there's definitely some things that are more broken than others. But yeah, I'm very impressed. Let me send Stella a quick
And
message. Oh, sorry, I think I lost you there for a second. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I've got you.
Okay, good. Yeah, I lost about like 30 seconds of your audio at the end there. But the last thing I heard was you talking about Mind Witches just being a very bold move, and just the impressive balance of deck building in general.
Yes. Yeah, and that's a combination of it. So deck building is a tremendous amount of fun for me, and it is an integral part of the game for me. When I look at card balance, I do try to consider the deck building environment. I just don't think of deck building as like an outlier, like, oh, it's this thing that you kind of can do, but we're not really going to factor it. For me, if somebody asks me to evaluate a card in terms of is this card balanced, I do consider deck building. Because it's just a part of the game for me, a major part of the game.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I'm so glad I asked you. I'm so glad we took the time to talk about this because like your experience with just being so into deck building and right from the get-go, like I've just never heard someone express that. For Summoner Wars for second edition at least. For first edition it seemed like deck building was a lot more of a necessity. Now I haven't played, so this is just what I've heard, but like there's like you said, in second edition, it's very rare for there to be a card that's just sort of it just you just want to take it out immediately even in base decks, Well, in second edition, there's only a few of those that it's like, okay, yeah, this card just it was a dud. Like there's just like a couple
Yep.
champions here and there from the master set,
Yep.
basically, and that's about it.
Sadly, Midi
Um,
Mumway. Yep. We all know.
so
We're all thinking it.
many,
Midi Mumway. We got to just say it.
yeah, Mini Mumway, Jacob, Guldas, but like other than that, you
Oh,
don't have that
Jacob.
much. But I mean, I love to hear that you've had that experience, that you've experienced this way, Summoner Wars this way, and that like, and when a deck comes out, you're excited about how you're gonna start building that in, and that you have, and that
Definitely.
you've had a whole group of people excited about that too, because that's just on the server, it's all base decks. We're all talking about base decks, and just I don't know, it's just amazing to hear about different
Here's
ways that you can approach this game.
so
Yeah,
for those who are listening, and I don't know if you're going to post this on YouTube for people to listen to later,
yeah,
but
yeah. No, I will.
okay, so I already spoke to you about this kind of behind the scenes when we weren't on stream. But for those who listen, here's a fun deck building combo to try out. Again, at my level of play, I'm very confident I have not tapped anywhere near the full potential of this. But a fun combo is to deck build Tess from the Wayfarers into the Mountain Vargat. Because if you take a look at Tess's ability, it's a sleeper. It is niche. Don't get me wrong. It's a niche ability. Um, it's not always going to be wonderfully, perfectly viable for the game state, but Tess's ability can be a real sleeper. And now put that into the Mountain Bargath, who have Stronghold as their epic event, and suddenly look at the things that become capable for a faction that combines Stronghold with Tess. Typically, you see Stronghold, and we're very early in Mountain Vargath play. We haven't seen a ton of it, but right now, more than 50% of the time, Stronghold is defensive. Stronghold allows you to be a little bit more reckless, a little bit more freewheeling with Sunderved, and then Stronghold gets you out of what would otherwise be a punishing position. It allows Sunderved to go in, play suddenly aggressive, get in some hits, and then you Stronghold and you get out of there. Now imagine Tess in that deck, and your gates are suddenly bouncing all over the board. Your gates are getting into very aggressive, very forward positions, and Stronghold completely changes its application because of the way Tess has set up your board. So something to experiment with for those who like deck building.
That's yeah, I love the sound of that. That sounds nuts. Yeah, no, thanks for sharing
your
that.
your opponents your opponents need to really respect Tess in those scenarios. Like watch out. A Mountain Vargath player brings out Tess. Uh, it could really make Stronghold a much more dangerous card and not so much of a rescue card.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And like, and already I can sort of, it's like sometimes people like to throw Sundervet up, place a gate, and do like the offensive stronghold, but it seems rare. So yeah, and Tess would definitely help with that. That's very cool.
And of
You
course,
yeah, go ahead.
I apologize. I was just going to say Vlox. For the people who enjoy playing the cloaks and unlocking all kinds of crazy abilities, master of the art, every single wave that comes out, every single faction that can possibly deck build in with Vlox, it's the possibilities are truly limitless um, with what you can do with Vlox. Um, so, I mean, for example, you can deck build in Ice Smiths into the cloaks, and all you're doing is you copy the Ice Smith, and it is nothing more than very easy boost generation. Um, by Vlox copying an Ice Smith, it's one of the easiest ways for Vlox to get boost on himself. And then, why would you need that? Well, because you've also deck built in Blarth. So after you've piled up this boost on Vlox and your opponent is wondering, why on earth did you do that? Well, you've also deck built in Blarth. And then you bring him out and Vlox copies him. And now you've got 8 attack just alone right there. And you can hit that shockingly fast if you can get the Ice Smiths out pretty early and copy them. So there's another, crazy zany combo.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot of fun. I've never tried that. I think I'd heard of that. But like no one's talking about that in the Discord. Like I'd heard that on a Plaid Hat podcast even, but no one. I don't know if people have tried it. I'm very. I think I will. I think I've got to. Now you mention it. Any other crazy, any other favorite things for you to deck build?
Definitely Dagger going into Cave Goblins.
Yeah.
That's one of those that's like an absolute must because I am not a fan of the Eater. I think that card, unfortunately, is not balanced. That's another great thing is if you have an in-person group when you're playing with the physical cards, you can actually balance the game yourself. And so we would just make the Eater cost 4. I remember just reduce the cost by 2. And we even did our own little errata to other cards as well. But if you're playing with the Eater straight up, the way it's printed, to me, it's kind of like a no-brainer to just deck build in Dagger. Dagger is so good, and put her in with the Cave Goblins. And then with all of those 0 cost commons, 2 0 cost, the other champions, 2 0 cost, tremendous opportunity for her to wreak havoc in there.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. And with the breakers, you said you like to. There's one of your favorites. Any cards in particular that you're putting in there?
Yes, actually, a card that I think is oftentimes underrated. I I would not rave about this card, but I personally think this card is very solid, very viable, and actually gets better in breakers, and that's Guilford. Um,
Whoa, I
putting
did
in,
not expect you to say that.
yeah, no one ever does. And people don't really like Guilford. Honestly, I find Guilford um to be quite good. Flight is a very strong ability. Just that mobility that you get from flight is so good. And then the deceivers, who earlier I said I find them very hard to leverage, and frequently I deck build them out. Well, if you combine deceivers with Guilford, I've had some success there. You've got deceivers positioned, and then Guilford knocks enemy units away from the deceivers. And then because Guilford is ranged, he can still attack what he just knocked away and caused 1 damage to by moving it away from the deceivers. I feel like Guilford can get a lot more mileage in the breakers, and I will frequently put him in place of either Gwalark or Kalal. Either one of those can go. I think Gul'dun is very, very good, so I would leave Gul'dun and I would deck build in Guilford. I would also deck build in Silts in a heartbeat. Remove both Gwalark and Kalal. Put in Guilford. Put in Silts.
And Guildford, but yeah, that's interesting. And in chat, we're having Jaxic agreeing with you that Guilford is underrated. That's interesting. Yeah,
Thank you, Jaxic. Yes.
yeah, it has me wondering because like flight seems like when you're in Ava, it's just like okay, well everything has flight. You don't really think twice about it. But a champion with flight and bully, like it seems like some nice surprise factors, and bully can even
It is. It
force
is.
enemy summoners. I've always felt
Yeah.
like there's potential with Guilford, but I've never realized it, and I've almost never played him.
Anything that disrupts formations. And there again, I love that disruptive style play. I enjoy that very, very much. There's fun in that for me. And Guilford is very disruptive. Um, you just picture he takes off, he lands, and whatever he lands near, he knocks that all around. He pushes those cards away. And if you have well placed deceivers, there's ping damage, there's chip damage right there. Um, Mind Knights, I like Mind Knights a lot. I think if there is a card that's a bit understated as a common, for 2 cost, I think Mind Knight was the right place to do it because Invoke Fear is so strong. It's so taxing on the opponent that I can understand Mind Knight being a bit understated. And so you already have a deck with the breakers that's very disruptive to your opponents. So throwing in some Mind Knights, really, really good. Um, Always keep 4 Mind Witches. And then if you have Mind Witches, now it's enhancing most other commons that you build in because your Mind Witches start to gain all these other options of things that they can copy. So Mind Knights I'll build in, and then Enigma Sages, like I said. Airy Divers, I like Airy Divers very much. I think that's a good strong unit. It's the only 1 cost 2/2 that's coming to my mind where I don't feel robbed. Um, 1 cost is huge on a 2/2 unit. It's like that 2/2 needs to be so good. Uh, and I think airy divers are very strong. So I've definitely built those in. I've never tried building in Rust Riders. I know it's an option. Never tried that. I've actually never tried biters. And now I haven't played enough recently to try Arbiters of War or Arbiters of Justice. I really struggle with especially Arbiters of Justice. I struggle with those units greatly. Um, uh, it's hard for me because of my level of skill. It's hard for me to not harm myself more than I harm my opponent
Yeah, yeah.
with the high elves.
That is understandable. I've been there. Um, yeah, and they're just tough units to use in general with those auras and the Arbiters of War, even just to keep them in back and not get them killed, and it's tough. But
Another
yeah, go
expected
ahead.
option in breakers is thrusters and airy gates instead of
Mm,
blast. A lot of times I'll remove blast, or you can just errata blast and make it cost 0. I think blast is an unfortunate victim of overcosting. I don't. For me, it just doesn't feel good at 1. It feels good at 0. It doesn't feel OP. It feels good, but at 1, it's painful. And so if it has to stay at 1, I'm very inclined to remove both copies of Blast. And I've had fun putting in 1 thruster, 1 airy gate, or 2 thrusters. It opens up your options. It starts to give you more viability, a little bit more aggression as breakers if you do that.
yeah, 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 and they have so many options. Um, so many of these cards are just interesting to try, and I feel like at this point with so many decks, there's just like a lot of different ways you could build each and every deck, and just a lot of things it could focus on.
Definitely.
A- and I like that they're all like you can you can cater that to your personality or play style however you want. Yeah, you and yeah, I love that you guys were. I love the idea of just doing more deck building in person too. Like I've done most of my deck building with the app and having this nice like format to fix everything out. But like always that dream of just laying out like all of the commons that have an air symbol and just like thinking about it and like putting that level of thought into it. Like in
Very
w-
much
w-
something that I have done. Exactly what you
yeah,
just described.
yeah. That's awesome.
And for Sky Spear Avians, I'm already now looking forward to seeing if Varn can find a place in Skyspear Avians. Just my brainstorm, my thought being, you really need to keep your units close to Ava. And so if you can get Varn out, and if Varn can be like a bodyguard staying close to Ava, a bulky, stronger unit, keep Varn near Ava, it could allow you to have one of your commons drift a little bit away from Ava and then form up later on in your turn so that when your next turn starts, that common is back within Ava's aura because Varn brought the common close to himself and he has stayed close to Ava. So I'm already curious. I haven't tried it, but I've just been curious. Varn is so good as a champion in general. I'm wondering if there's going to be a home for him in Skyspear Avians. Maybe remove Wrath and see what different feel that gives the deck.
That's interesting. Yeah, I definitely. Yeah, I'd want to try him in a whole bunch of decks. I feel like untapped potential with him. Like there's just so many ways that ability is gonna get you. Like I just haven't played much Mountain Vargath. I really just don't know.
Mhm.
But like I can only imagine the different ways that you would want to use that ability.
Barn is very, very good. I think a little bit overhyped right now. I'm wondering if that's a bit of the newness factor. But I also think that Baldo is a little bit overhyped. Really good. Don't get me wrong. I think Baldo is a strong champion. Personal opinion, I think just a little overhyped. Not as S plus tier as he's made up to be. And right now, kind of what I'm seeing is people saying that Varn is like S plus tier. I don't know if Varn's that good, but I would put him in line with Baldo. Both of them, very good. Yeah,
Interesting, interesting. Yeah, well, I'm excited to keep playing around with it. And I hope you do too. I hope to hear what new deck builds you like to try and what you're up to.
absolutely. Absolutely. I'm always excited and happy to talk about this great game. So again, thanks for having me on today. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Oh no, it's so much my pleasure. I yeah, this is it's been wonderful and like just thanks for sharing your story and what you've been doing with this game. It's uh unique unfortunately in this digital age where we're all just playing it on one server. Yeah, it's been really wonderful to hear about that and get to chat with you and review that Sand Goblins game. That was insane. So yeah, thank you so much for coming on.
Most definitely, my pleasure. And anybody's always welcome to hit me up in the Discord as well. Always happy to chat with folks. Great night to you, and look forward to
Yeah.
doing this
Oh,
again sometime.
and 1 second, I have in chat. So who
Yeah,
is your guest? Question mark. I guess. Sorry, I didn't do a good enough job introducing you. It'll be in the YouTube title. This is Cell on the Discord. And you could say anything
yeah,
about that. Right now, you have a picture of Cylinder from the Shadow Elves.
yeah. Selendar, from first edition, absolutely my favorite summoner. Hands down.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's been fun, and you just said feel free to. No, I get it. I mean, I only mentioned it once in the intro. But yeah, well, like you said, feel free to send them a message if you have any questions about anything we talked about or just about the game. Feel free to chat with me as well. But yeah, thank you so much for coming on.
You bet. Have a great night. Thank you.
All right, you too. Bye. Awesome. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. That was fun. I love just having I love having so many people on. I'm so glad and Stella reached out to me. I was enjoying the videos, and then we figured we might as well chat about it together. And I love to hear that. I love people enjoying the content on YouTube and Twitch, and just getting to talk about this game together. Um, yeah, it makes me happy. And thanks everyone that tuned in and all the chatting. Hagrada, I love I love seeing you around. I'm so glad you're here so much. It's a lot of fun. Thanks Jexik as well for tuning in. And yeah, I think I have plans tomorrow, right? It's funny. Only Wednesday, huh? It really feels like it should be later in the week. Tomorrow afternoon, I'm here with Beans. Playing whatever the heck we feel like with Beans, and then in the evening, I'll be here with Vox, and then no stream on Friday. And Scuffle is now at 11 o'clock in the morning Eastern time on Saturday. And maybe some like casual game review or something on Sunday. If I'm feeling it, we'll see. Yeah, thank you everyone for tuning in. Appreciate it. And I will catch you next time. Bye.